It started with an innocent game of weaving willow leaves into a crown. But when Rita's lips met mine, everything changed. We became consumed by forbidden desire, stealing secret moments in hidden places whenever we could. But as our love grew stronger, so did the danger. Lies piled up and trust crumbled, until our entire world came crashing down. I thought it was just a fleeting fling, but falling for Rita turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. Farm life has its rhythms: dawn's early light painting the horizon, noon sun beating down on the fields, and dusk's gentle settling like a feather quilt. I've known every inch of this land since childhood, learned to navigate its secrets under the watchful eyes of my parents. But lately, everything seems off kilter. Dad's been distant, his mind preoccupied with the looming farm debt. Mom's tried to keep spirits high, but her perpetual smile now feels more like a mask than genuine cheer. I do what I can to help, putting in extra hours at Jenkins Hardware and saving every penny from my meager earnings. The hardware store's been a fixture in farm corners for generations, with its rusty tools, creaky floorboards, and the perpetual scent of sawdust and turpentine. Mr. Jenkins has taken me under his wing, teaching me the ins and outs of fixing broken appliances and mending fences. Despite the stress at home, I find solace in the predictable routine of my days: waking before dawn, tending to the farm chores with Mom's guidance, then heading into town for my shift at the hardware store. But even that refuge seems threatened lately. Just yesterday, Mr. Jenkins summoned me to his cluttered office, a frown etched deep on his weathered face. He handed me a notice: the bank was foreclosing on our mortgage unless we could come up with a hefty payment within the month. I left the store feeling sick to my stomach, my mind reeling with options that all seemed futile. We can't sell the farm, it's been in our family for generations. And even if we somehow managed to scrape together the money, where would we go? This is home. As I walked back through the quiet streets of farm corners, a figure stepped out from the shadows of Mrs. Kettleman's bakery: Rita. She flashed me that sly smile of hers, her red hair glinting in the fading light like a warning beacon. "Hey there, Wayne," she called out, her voice husky with an undercurrent of mischief. "Looks like you could use a distraction from all that gloom." Rita sauntered up to me, her hips swaying with each step. She was always dressed in clothes that seemed a few sizes too small for her curves, a deliberate choice that left little to the imagination. As far as I knew, Rita's only real vocation was being the town's resident temptress. I felt my face heat up at the sight of her, torn between irritation at her cavalier attitude and an undeniable spark of attraction. "What do you want, Rita?" I growled, trying to sound indignant but failing miserably. Rita just laughed, a throaty sound that always made me shiver despite myself. "Oh, I think we both know what I'm after," she purred, reaching out to toy with the hem of my shirt. "What do you say, Wayne? Can we take our minds off all this doom and gloom for a little while?" As much as I wanted to resist her advances, I couldn't deny that Rita offered an escape from the suffocating weight of responsibility and fear hanging over me. Maybe just this once, I could let myself get lost in the pleasure of her company. But even as the thought crossed my mind, a small voice of warning echoed through my head: "Be careful what you wish for." I knew Rita was trouble the moment she sauntered into the hardware store. Her flame-red hair was piled high on her head in provocative curls, and those green eyes of hers seemed to gleam with a perpetual invitation. Mr. Jenkins always looked relieved when she left, not that he ever said anything out loud, but I could read it in his expressions. Rita's presence had a way of making even the grumpiest of customers crack a smile, though. And me? Well, let's just say her flirtatious overtures kept my blood pressure up and my thoughts decidedly unladylike. Especially when she'd bend over to look at some tool or another, that skirt riding perilously high on her thighs. But it was more than just physical attraction keeping me on edge around Rita. There was an aura of secret surrounding her, whispers from the other ladies in town about how she'd taken liberties with their sons and nephews before moving on to greener pastures. I couldn't help but wonder if those rumors were true, or if people were just jealous of Rita's free spirit. The fact remained that everyone knew better than to get entangled with her. Except now, standing outside Mrs. Kettleman's bakery in the gathering twilight, Rita was looking at me with a sultry gaze that promised more than just conversation. "Come on, Wayne," she cooed, slipping a hand into mine and giving it a squeeze. "Let's take a walk down by the creek." My heart pounded in my chest as I hesitated, torn between curiosity and common sense. The old mill race ran through the woods just beyond town, its babbling waters and rustling leaves providing an isolated backdrop for all manner of clandestine trysts. I glanced back at Jenkins' hardware, wondering if Mr. Jenkins had any idea what kind of mischief Rita might have in mind. But the store was closed up tight for the night, and I knew he'd be home by now, tending to his garden or reading through his beloved Civil War history books. With a sigh, I let Rita lead me down the sidewalk and into the woods, the silence enveloping us like a heavy curtain. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of earth and decaying leaves. Rita's hand tightened around mine as we walked deeper into the shadows. Before long, the trees closed in around us, blocking out any remaining light from the distant town. Rita slowed her pace, pulling me to a stop beside the slow-moving waters of the mill race. "Here?" I asked incredulously, trying to ignore the way my heart was racing at our proximity and the secrecy of the setting. Rita just smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Isn't it lovely? So peaceful." I couldn't disagree. Even with Rita's presence, there was an undeniable serenity to the scene before us. The water rippled lazily over moss-covered stones, and a pair of kingfishers darted through the underbrush nearby. But beneath the surface calm, I could sense the tension simmering between us, the unspoken desires waiting to be unleashed. Rita reached up with her free hand to untie a length of twine securing a bundle of willow branches hanging over the creek. She stepped closer until our bodies were almost touching, then pressed the supple switches against my chest. "Let's play a game," she whispered, her breath hot against my ear as she began weaving the slender stems into a pattern on my shirt. "I'll make you a crown of love, if you agree to wear it for me." Her fingers brushed against mine with each deft twist and turn, sending shivers racing down my spine. I couldn't help but imagine what other parts of her body might feel like beneath those tantalizing clothes. The willow leaves tickled at my skin as Rita worked, the soft rustling a counterpoint to our heavy breathing. When she finally tied off the last knot, she stepped back to admire her handiwork. "Well," Rita purred, tugging at the crown of leaves to make sure it was secure on my head. "Do you like your new accessory?" It was ridiculous and embarrassment even, but there was something undeniably charming about being adorned with this whimsical offering from Rita's hands. I felt a flush rise to my cheeks as I met her gaze, trying to look stern even as my heart raced with anticipation. "I suppose it'll do," I muttered, though my voice betrayed none of the reservations swirling in my head. "But don't think this means anything more than just a silly game, Rita." She laughed, a low, throaty sound that seemed to vibrate through every cell in my body. "Oh Wayne, you're so adorable when you try to be serious." Rita reached out to brush a stray leaf from the crown, her fingers lingering on the side of my face. "I think we both know this is more than just a game, don't we?" Her words hung in the air between us like a challenge, daring me to defy the undeniable chemistry building with each passing moment. I knew I should step back, put some distance between us before things escalated too far. But as Rita leaned in closer, her lips brushing tantalizingly near mine, I found myself frozen in place, powerless to resist the allure of this forbidden temptation. The moment Rita's soft mouth touched mine, all coherent thought fled my mind. She tasted like sugar and spice, her kiss as warm and inviting as a summer breeze. My arms came up instinctively, wrapping around her waist to pull her closer as our lips moved in perfect harmony. The willow leaves rustled softly against my skin, forgotten amidst the onslaught of desire coursing through my veins. Rita's hand slid down to clutch at my hips, her fingers digging into the fabric of my pants as she deepened the kiss. I could feel her body pressing flush against mine, every curve and swell igniting a fire within me that threatened to consume us both. Breaking away for air, Rita nipped at my lower lip before trailing kisses along my jawline, her breath hot against my skin. "Wayne," she murmured, her voice husky with need, "I want you so badly, let me show you how much." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, even as I knew this was moving too fast, too far beyond the boundaries of propriety. But Rita's touch, her scent, her very presence seemed to dissolve all rational thought until there was only this us, entwined in the shadowy embrace of the creek. With a moan that echoed through the trees, I surrendered to Rita's seductive onslaught, my hands roaming over the supple curves of her body as she ground herself against me. The world narrowed down to just the two of us, lost in a haze of lust and forbidden pleasure. Rita's mouth found mine once more, our tongues tangling in a sensual dance as we kissed with reckless abandon. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the blood rushing through my veins like wildfire as she teased and coaxed me into a state of desperate need. And then Rita was tugging at my shirt, pulling it over my head to bare my skin to her eager touch. Her hands roamed over my chest and abs, tracing the lines of muscle with reverent fingers that left goosebumps in their wake. "God, Wayne," she breathed, her voice thick with desire as she pressed a trail of kisses along my collarbone, "you're even more beautiful than I imagined." Her words sent a jolt of pride and arousal surging through me. Beautiful? Rita thought I was beautiful? Before I could respond, Rita's hands were fumbling at the waistband of my pants, her intent clear as she sought to free me from the confines of clothing. The air seemed to vibrate with anticipation as Rita slowly unzipped my fly, revealing the evidence of my arousal. She let out a soft gasp at the sight, her green eyes darkening with lust. "Fuck, Wayne," she whispered, reaching into my boxers to wrap her fingers around my straining erection. "You're so hard for me already." Rita's touch was electric, sending shockwaves of pleasure racing through my nerves as she began to stroke me in a slow, deliberate rhythm. I couldn't hold back a guttural moan at the sensation, my hips jerking forward into her palm. "I need you," Rita breathed against my mouth, "right now, please, Wayne." In that moment, any lingering doubts about where this was heading dissipated like mist in the morning sun. With a low growl of consent, I reached down to guide Rita's hand away, replacing it with my own as I fumbled with her skirt zipper. The rest, as they say, is history, a tale of forbidden passion and reckless abandon, forged beneath the twinkling canopy of stars and the gentle lullaby of the creek.